Who are the most overrated running backs for now in the expert consensus rankings for fantasy football in 2022? And who are the guys that you may want to avoid as potential busts for the season? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We're getting ready for the big NFL schedule release there on Thursday. Some breakdown and fallout for you from the fantasy football perspective on Friday. Before we do that, we got to do one more show here looking at the running backs, and then we'll get into the wide receivers there, the sleepers that you want to look at, the underrated players there. Now we're going to focus on the overrated running backs. These are the players ranked a little too high, in my opinion, there on the expert consensus rankings for half-point PPR on Fantasy Pros. So early in relation to their real value. And I think we'll see some adjustments for the market as we get closer to the real fantasy football draft time. But we want to see where we are at with the rankings to know where we're going later here in the offseason as we go deeper into the offseason. Right now, it's the quiet part. You got mini camps going on, a training camp. There's going to be a little bit of break before that, but we want to kind of set the table here to see where all these players are ranked. And again, now we're looking at the running backs that might be having inflated values so far in 2022. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available to you on all platforms. All right, let's start right near the top here. This is an elite RB1. You got Jonathan Taylor. You got Christian McCaffrey up there, the Dalvin Cooks of the world. And you have one guy that very familiar. He's been a hammer in fantasy, but the foot and shoe came off a little bit last year with his lack of availability down the stretch. It's Derrick Henry. So the wear and tear is real. When you are taking that much of a pounding and seeing that much of a volume, it's going to get there. And I think it kind of crept in there at the end of the season for Derrick Henry. He tried to keep it going and stay healthy, but they filled in with Dr. Foreman and Dr. Hilliard and some others. And I think there's a big reason why they invested a pretty decent high draft pick on Hassan Haskins. They're trying to get that situation short up. They did lose Foreman in the free agency. So you now have Hilliard in there and Hassan Haskins, a big back, power back, a very similar profile to Derrick Henry. I'm not saying he's going to be the same type of back. I mean, Henry was blowing people away at Alabama with his size and strength. When the Heisman, Haskins was more of a complimentary back there at Michigan, but same type of back, pound between the tackles. That also says they're going to ease the workload a little bit on Henry this year. Now, I think the Titans would be silly not to do that. You overload him, you have the chance of breaking down even more with that foot. So we've probably seen the elite best days of Derrick Henry in the past in terms of availability, durability, and the downright dominant production. Now, it would not surprise me if he still has another strong season, but would I invest a top 3 or top 4 pick in a half-point PPR? No, especially when he doesn't give you that value in catching passes here. And again, I think they're going to ease the burden on him quite a bit. It might open things up in the passing game a little bit. I could see, again, maybe a lot of short to intermediate passing here for Ryan Tannehill. So maybe not the vertical without A.J. Brown in there or Julio Jones, but more that horizontal kind of extension of the running game type thing here. So teams are not going to respect that downfield pass game as much here as Robert Woods is coming off an ACL. Burks is a rookie. So those are some there. I don't think they're as weak or as strong as they were up front, taking some hits here. So again, Derrick Henry, beware. I just don't think I would invest that. I still think he comes in the RB1 conversation comfortably, but if I'm going to take him closer to the top near Jonathan Taylor, I'm not going to invest that high of a pick. Same thing goes with Alvin Kamara. Like, he's been a top half RB1 for a while. He's been a consistent pass catcher, so they're helping his volume and production half point and full point PPR. But we know the Saints invested in number one wide receiver. We also know Michael Thomas is back in the fold. So Thomas wasn't there regularly for them. They could throw a little bit more to the tight end. You got Chris Olave being a big dominant target. You still have Marquez Callaway. They want to push the ball downfield a little bit more. That's why they immediately upgraded their pass protection, losing Terran Armstead to the Dolphins. They picked up Trevor Penning in the draft, potential left tackle to place opposite Ryan Ramczyk on the right side. So they went right away to work. James Winston, the big arm, are appealing. They've also pivoted away from Taysom Hill being a option at quarterback. He's going to be more of a wrinkle tight end and runner that we've seen before. So another option to Alvin Kamara's value, seeing those touches. Now, the power situation, you don't have a Mark Ingram type necessarily, but Kamara's also getting up there. The mileage is up there, and the touches add up too. It's not just the wear and tear of running between the tackles, but he's done a lot of reception work. And every time you catch a ball or run the ball, you're going to take hits and wear down a little bit. So Kamara's volume slowly creeping up there. The age is also becoming a little bit of a factor. Again, I'm not saying these guys totally drop off. They're still going to get good volume, but in terms of investing really high picks in them and running back versus some others that are out in the field, we talked about some of them like Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Leonard Fournette, even Cam Akers, Ezekiel Elliott having some upside there. When we talk about the sleepers, that's how we look at it, balancing it out. Some of these guys drop down a little bit. Some of those guys rise up a little bit and become better values. But Alvin Kamara, the profile just definitely says that he's going to see fewer balls come his way with the way this offense is running. And again, more downfield passing, maybe less of the checkdowns. Winston, not necessarily the best checkdown quarterback either if he's healthy. So that's going to hurt Kamara. And then being a little bit touchdown dependent there, I think they'll be wary of that, especially with Hill in the mix there to cut into that scoring and red zone running as well. Aaron Jones already saw his value go down. He's now near the borderline of RB1, RB2 in the 12 to 15 range there in most rankings, expert rankings of this. They're up there 12. He's been to 13 as well. Aaron Jones, again, A.J. Dillon has been such a big factor, and Dillon is only going to grow in his role here. Behind Aaron Jones, they've kind of scaled it back for Jones here, and I think not having that same dangerous threat in the passing game, I mean, Jones could see a little bit of work there in that capacity, but A.J. Dillon also is improving as a pass catcher. And I think they have enough there with Christian Watson, the rookie draft pick, playing off Marcus Valdez Scantling's role where he used to be in Devontae Adams' role. So you got a guy replacing that position. You got Randall Cobb, a short area receiver. Al Lazard also can play in the slot and be a possession guy here. So, and Robert Tonyan is also back. So another guy who can pilfer the touchdowns there in the red zone for Green Bay. So Aaron Jones is kind of in limbo. I think he's an RB2 for sure, but I'm going to drop him down a little bit more into that 18-20 range to be careful because I think Dillon's still on his way up. And remember, Dillon yielded pretty strong RB3 value, even half-point PPR last year. So guys that we've been used to taking really high in drafts, but certain circumstances have hurt them a little bit. The wear, the mileage that they've had, some things that are happening elsewhere with their team. They're in the receiving game to also cut into half-point PPR value. And again, just volume and featured roles can diminish here, and these guys can have additional durability issues here going into the season in 2022. Similarly, we have 6 more guys to talk about as potentially being overrated running backs in fantasy for 2022, just based on where they are with their ranking in ADP, according to the experts here on Fantasy Pros and beyond. Before we get into the next wave of 3 players we'll break down for you, I do have to tell you summer's coming. And with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the ultimate perfect snack to take with you on family vacation. You can throw them in your bags in the car so they're handy to reach, in your kids' backpack so they can get their Built Bars. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you're fueled for your summer adventures wherever they might lead you. Best thing about Built Bar, they're healthy and delicious. So no more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. And you want to get your supply for all summer long. Road trip, perfect for that. You can avoid getting that unhealthy food on the road. You can get the delicious Built Bar, and that's what's special about Built Bar. All Built Bars and their puffs that are kind of marshmallow spin, they are covered in 100% chocolate. That means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Make sure you try the puffs because they have some great flavors there. We're going crazy for them. People have ordered them quite a bit here. There's some amazing flavors, including banana cream pie and cinnamon churro. Who doesn't like a protein bar that tastes like a churro? And like all Built Bars, they're very healthy for you, low calories, 140 calories only. Just take the regular Built Bars as well. Most of them contain 130 calories, only 4 grams sugar, only 4 net carbs, plus 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and doesn't net carbs. Go to Built.com to get your favorites, whatever they might be, banana cream pies. I mentioned raspberry, double chocolate, coconut almond. They've got flavors for everyone who likes nuts or everyone who doesn't like nuts as well or can't eat nuts. So they're going to take care of you at Built Bar. All the bars you get are going to be delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. Check them out only at Built.com. And the only place you can get our great deal on Built Bar and Puffs is to go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, it is time to continue the show and look at our running back sleeper, or busts, I should say, that are guys that are a little bit overrated based on their ranking right now in the expert consensus, ADP. We'll talk about 3 more of those guys. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Saquon Barkley, I think people are optimistic about Barkley with his new offense with Brian Dable. They're taking things over. What are you going to get from Barkley? But I just don't trust the durability. The Giants have looked to shop him around and phase him out here. He just has been disappointing. His availability is the biggest thing. And this is what you run into sometimes with backs that had a lot of work in college. They sometimes give up a lot there in their production at the earlier level, and then they get here, they don't have a lot left in the tank. And Barkley came out of the gate, remember, flying as a rookie. So they loaded up on him early, and now you're seeing maybe the wear and tear catch up with him a little bit. So Saquon Barkley, again, I've seen this before. It's hard to invest in him. The availability is just very questionable. Again, he could have been a really special back, and I think you saw Christian McCaffrey go through the same thing, and McCaffrey is still worth it because whenever he's out in the field, he's a big-time producer. Barkley can be disappointing season. So we've seen the Giants incorporate other people. They've shopped, maybe trying to move Barkley. I just can't invest here. Knowing the Giants have pivoted away, there should be more pass-happy team here with Brian Dable. They have no commitment to Barkley the way the old coaching staff did. So then Saquon, I like the concept of Saquon. I love the talent of Saquon. It just is not coming together. Again, it comes down to being out there, and I just completely cannot trust him. And I feel a little bit the same with McCaffrey, but again, McCaffrey, I know is bona fide. If I get him and get some kind of handcuff situation, I'm going to be tied to some big-time production with the Panthers. With Barkley, I'm not sure. We've tried other backs there behind him, and it hasn't quite worked out. So then Saquon, I'm just not going to invest too high there, even though he's seen as a pretty high-end RB2 at this point. Antonio Gibson is also a hard sell for me. I want to be more in on Antonio Gibson. Remember that weird thing with J.D. McKissick where he'd almost gone to the Bills and they brought him back there and gave him enough money? So McKissick is still in the mix, taking away those pass-catching moments. You also have Jarrett Patterson. I like this kid. And then you have now Brian Robinson from Alabama. He's a straight-up pure power back, good finisher. So you got a power back now in Robinson. You got that pass catcher in McKissick. Cutting into a lot of Gibson's roles here. Do we get a full-blown committee here for Ron Rivera and Scott Turner? It's a little bit concerning. They used a higher pick than I expected on a player such as Robinson to give him a power back, big back finisher. I thought Robinson would have been an ideal backup there for Derrick Henry. So Gibson is just making me worry that I like Gibson as a player. I like what he could do. I think they should give him 20, 25 touches. I'm not sure you're going to get that from the Commanders here in 2022 as they go a little bit more committee to help Carson Wentz here. So, yeah, just not buying it. I don't like the moves here are in favor of Gibson. I don't get it. I get maybe he's the converted wide receiver. They don't want to put too much on him. Maybe they look at his durability issues that he's had. He's played through it last year. It was a shin injury, and they want to just hedge their bets here and limit his touches on the front end instead of worrying about it if he's not available on the back end. So a lot of things in play here for Antonio Gibson. But 2 NFC East backs right now I want to avoid at their current ADPs. They're in the teens are Saquon Barkley and Antonio Gibson. All right, David Montgomery, I want to like this guy more. He's in the early 20s here, 21 to 23. A lot of rankings there, according to Fantasy Pros. I don't see the Bears being all that more explosive. I think he's going to be buried to where he was here last year. The offensive line is still going through some issues at the tackles. We'll see Braxton Jones pays off on the right side, but Justin Fields, the cupboard is pretty bare with the receivers and the options here. I don't think the Bears are going to be playing from head all that often. Their defense is still going through a transition year without Khalil Mack, some bodies there that they're used to, not available. So I think the Bears defense is going to take lumps. I don't think Montgomery can make up for all that in the passing game. They also like Khalil Herbert quite a bit behind him, especially with no Damian Williams around. So Herbert could be more interchangeable with Montgomery this year. So I love Montgomery again, the player, much like Antonio Gibson. I just don't think he's in a good situation to be taken full advantage of. So if you're looking for that return on the high end there, the theory and concept of Gibson and Montgomery being more productive is more promising than what it actually is here for fantasy football in 2022. All right, that takes care of 6 backs that I'm going to look at that are a bit overrated now. Potential busts here on the fantasy football expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros. We still have 3 more we'll talk about as we get deeper into the RB2s and get into some RB3s for you on Locked On Fantasy Football. We've been here talking football throughout the offseason. We're locking up a draft. The draft is just finished and complete here, but they're going to already start looking at next year's prospects. So many good people on the board there, including C.J. Stroud of Ohio State at quarterback, as well as his rival, who figures to be the co-Heisman favorite, Bryce Young of Alabama, the winner from last year. You got Will Anderson, just a disruptive pass rusher there out of Alabama. Maybe he would have gone pretty high in this year's draft, even ahead of Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker. So a lot of good stuff to talk about there. Looking forward to next year. Locked On NFL Draft here on the network. Check it out wherever you get your podcast. Much more like you can get Locked On Fantasy Football anywhere where you get your podcast, and you can also find us on YouTube. All right, it is time to close the show looking at 3 more backs that I think have inflated value in fantasy football half-point PPR, according to the rankings right now after the 2022 draft. Josh Jacobs pops up on the list, and I wouldn't think I was going there with the influence of Josh McDaniels, turning him into more of a Damon Harris. I do like Damon Harris a lot more in that New England situation, playing off Mac Jones and the passing game there and being more run-heavy approach. But Josh Jacobs, again, they moved on Jalen Richard. You are not sure about Kenny Drake and his role. They didn't pick up the option on Josh Jacobs there. And they also made an interesting selection of the draft of Zamir White. I get it. He was a late third-day pick here, but Zamir White, I like the skill set here that fits McDaniel's offense. A little bit of James White in him, but also can handle the ball pretty easily. So I think they're just looking at, okay, Jacobs, the Patriot way, is not investing too highly in a running back and just looking at committee and some value there. So I would not be surprised if Jacobs, Drake, and White are more in splits here. So Jacobs was in a good spot with John Gruden, who wanted to overload him and all that. They went away from Gruden, and the fallout from that is that Jacobs wasn't trusted as much here. It took him a grind to get to 1,000 yards last year. So just not feeling with Jacobs, especially with Zamir White as a sleeper that I'm looking at as a rookie in fantasy football. All right. One guy that you have to be wary of as well, we were excited about what he did for the 49ers last year, is Elijah Mitchell. You still have Jeff Wilson Jr., you have Michael Hasty, you've added another back, Ty Davis-Price in the draft, you got Trey Sermon. I don't know how they feel about him right now, but you do have some options if you're the 49ers, and we know with Kyle Shanahan or Mike Shanahan, it can be a revolving door with your 1,000-yard rushers. So it would not surprise me it's a little bit committee or Mitchell is a little bit of frail back that he can't hold up to take those 20 to 25 touches and deliver that way again for second year. So a lot of things to watch out for, but the only constant with the 49ers backfield is change. Be always prepared for it. You've seen it with Raheem Mostert, came out of nowhere. Then we saw Wilson having some value. It's always in flux here. We were excited about Sermon, which was a good thought, but it just happened to be Mitchell being the guy last year. So be wary. I mean, Kyle Shanahan's a bit fickle with his running backs. He has real confidence in his zone blocking scheme, but he can go in that direction. So I'm not going to say, oh, I got a good value for Elijah Mitchell. I've got a good RB2, plug and play him, set it and forget it. That's not where I'm going to go here. So be wary again. I don't love these type of teams that just think running backs are changeable, because they are, and it makes us harder to really figure it out in fantasy football. Things can change quickly. We learned that quickly with the Mostert getting hurt, and then the Sermon looking like the guy pretty much with their high draft pick, and then they went right to the later draft pick, Mitchell. We didn't see it coming. So always be prepared for the unexpected with Kyle Shanahan, especially when it comes to the backfield. And we know the roller coaster ride after Terrell Davis that Mike Shanahan had in Denver with those guys with Reuben Drones and Mike Anderson and some of the people that they shuffle through here. So will not be surprised if the 49ers have yet another leading rusher out of the backfield. And keep in mind, you also have Trey Lance cutting into some of the value there as well. The last guy I'm going to look at is another second-year back. We didn't really see him at all last year, very early, but he tore up his knee. That's Travis Etienne of the Jaguars. Now, people are on him. You're looking at James Robinson coming off in a big injury with the Achilles. What do you do with Etienne? He's right there put into the RB2 conversation. Again, Robinson has been a trooper out there. He's a back that's going to be a factor at some point. We look at Doug Peterson and his history with the Eagles. He likes more committees here. I don't think you'll see Etienne in that hybrid wide receiver role because you have Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, Junior Laviska Shenault, some options there. So Etienne may be limited to get the touches he needs here, especially with the presence of Robinson looming if he can accelerate his rehab and be good to go. But again, Etienne also coming off a major injury with the torn ACL. So I just don't want to invest that highly. I do like the first-round pedigree of Etienne. I just wish he had gone to a little bit more dynamic team to be totally used as that Alvin Kamara type. Now, the checkdowns and things will be there, but I think it'll be a while before he gets up to speed with the yardage and scores here after missing completely his rookie season during the regular season. So, yeah, a lot to be figured out with Etienne and the Jaguars' backfield, how much he's preferred or how much he's trusted to stay healthy there for Peterson. So, a lot of things to watch there, and add him to the list of right now running backs I want to avoid as being overrated and potential busts here in 2022 for fantasy football. So there you have it. Here's your breakdown of your running backs to maybe avoid, at least for now, at their current ADPs. If they get adjusted a little bit, then they'll become better values. We'll watch that happening as we go through training camp and preseason, as we try to set the table here for the rankings. So we took care of the quarterbacks and the running backs. So next up would be the wide receivers. So thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Now make Locked On NFL your second listen. The schedule is about to be shown here for 2022. The NFL never stops. There's always a big event, and that this week, Thursday night, the release of the schedule, the times and dates of all the games there. So good reaction ready to come here, both on Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On NFL never stops either. So they're going to be with you all throughout the big news throughout the offseason. Get insights and opinions on hosts there, including Ross Jackson, Chris Carter, and Tony Wiggins, plus local Locked On NFL hosts that are representing all 32 teams on the network. There's no offseason for real fans, so make sure subscribe to the Locked On NFL on YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll catch you tomorrow with a look at our wide receiver sleepers there, underrated players in the fantasy football rankings for 2022.